We're talking today with Mr. Leo Kuznicki of Saginaw, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Kuznicki, can you begin by telling us a little bit about your own background? To start with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and my parents moved around various states where the work was.
Mm-hmm.
And
So where did you grow up?
Saginaw, Michigan.
Okay. And when did you move there, or how old were you?
Well, I was just a baby when they moved from Cleveland. But I remember living in various houses.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of work did your father do?
Well, various jobs, whatever you could get that would, bring in money for food and what have you. But he ended up, when he retired, he was a furrier or fur cutter, cut skins for fur coats.
Okay. Now, was he an immigrant? Was he born in this country, or
No, he was born in Poland. And my mother was born in, I think, what was occupied by the Germans at the time. And then I can't remember exactly, 1910 or somewhere along in there, they came to this country.
Right. So they were from what became Poland later, but was occupied by Germans or Russians or Austrians at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, did you graduate from high school?
Yes, I didn't graduate with the people I was going to high school with. I went, after I got back from the service, and I went to night school and earned a high school diploma.
Okay. Now, were you in school until you entered the service, or did you leave school and go to work?
No, I was inducted the 5th of July, and actually went in the service, I think it was the last week of, let's see. Yeah, the last week of August.
Okay. And that's 1943?
Right.
Okay.
43.
All right. Now, do you remember hearing about Pearl Harbor?
Oh, yeah.
And how did you learn about that?
Radio.
Okay. Now, when they announced that, did you understand what it meant?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I would have been 16 then. And like everyone at that time, you have a hate for the Japanese, but you'd have a hate for them no matter what they were, for what they did.
Sure. Okay. Now, before Pearl Harbor, were you paying much attention to what was happening in the world? Did you know there was a war in Europe?
Pretty much through the paper, yeah.
And did you think that sooner or later we were going to get into the war?
Pardon?
Did you think that eventually America was going to get into the war, even without Pearl Harbor?
I figured it would come about sooner or later.
Right. And then once war broke out, did you figure that you would go and enlist, or would you just let them draft you when the time came?
Oh no, I tried to enlist in the Air Force, but I was rejected because one eye was 20/30 and they required 20/20. So I went to Canada, and they said, get these papers filled out and you're in the Canadian Air Force, but the parents wouldn't sign.
Oh, okay, so you really tried to get into it then?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. And actually, you're only 18 when they draft you, so they
right.
you didn't have to wait long for them to catch up with you.
Oh, no.
All right. Now, once you got your draft notice, where did you report to?
To Fort Custer, That's where they sent us from Saginaw.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I went to California for the basic training.
Okay. And where in California did you go?
Camp Hahn, California,
Okay.
in about 70 miles east of Los Angeles.
So was that kind of out in the desert, or?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
Pretty much.
Now, what was your basic training experience like? What were you doing there?
It was good. It was interesting. You know, for someone my age, why, it was quite an experience. But
Well, can you describe it a little bit? What did they have you do there? What were you doing in basic training?
the usual, you know, from teach how to shoot to recognize gases and the various things go with warfare
Okay,
that you hope you never need or use.
right. Now, did they put a lot of emphasis on discipline, on following orders?
Pretty much,
Okay.
yeah.
And how did you respond to that?
Good,
Okay.
yeah.
So you didn't get into a lot of trouble?
No.
All right. Now, were there guys there you were training with who did get into trouble?
On a minor scale, they'd be AWOL for a few hours, or they'd get in the town, get drunk, and get locked up,
That sort of thing.
and things like that. But no, I never got any trouble.
Okay. Now, did they have you do a lot of marching and a lot of physical training?
Pretty much, yeah. We did more marching and training than we did when we were overseas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 50-mile hikes.
Now,
Things
okay, a 50-mile hike out in the desert, wouldn't that be something that'd be pretty hard on most
Oh.
guys?
It got so hot. In fact, you get the point where that rifle weighed 150 pounds. You end up dragging it in the sand.
All right. Now, about how long did they have you doing that kind of training?
13 weeks.
Okay. And then what happened at the end of 13 weeks?
They assign you to, well, wherever you're going to go, to the Pacific or Europe. We ended up in Europe.
Okay. Now, were you assigned to a unit while you were in basic training, or did they assign you after you finished that?
No, we were assigned to one in training.
Okay. And what unit were you training with?
It would be ordnance, anti-aircraft ordnance, artillery.
All right. So you were assigned to an anti-aircraft unit then? And what were you trained to use the guns or repair them, or what were you doing?
Repair mainly, and also test and use them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
when
And
they had to.
okay. And what size guns were you using?
Pardon?
What kind of guns did you have?
Smaller type, you mean, or big one?
Well, which ones did you work with?
40 millimeter 90s, 50 caliber machine guns, things like that.
Okay. Now, did you get much of an opportunity to fire them, or you said you test fired them?
Some, more for training.
Okay. Now, did they do that training out there in California, or did they send you somewhere else?
No, in California.
Okay. Now, were you already learning the anti-aircraft weapons during those first 13 weeks, or did you start that afterward?
On and off, you had other things they send you to school for.
Okay, because you provided us with a sort of a copy of kind of the basic history of the unit here, and it does indeed look like you are together from the very beginning, and you're with this unit pretty much from the start. So most of the other men, they couldn't have been there much longer than you were.
No,
Okay, then did you have any field training to do? Did you go out and do maneuvers with the unit?
Oh, yes.
Can you-
Out in the desert.
Okay, and what was that like?
Well, it was all right. It was the typical sand, hot, you know. But it was all part of the training. It's something you had to go through.
Mm-hmm. Okay, And what were your specific duties or responsibilities then?
Well, repair of sighting equipment, anything to do with optics.
Okay. Now, did you need specialized training then?
Yeah, they send a group to Aberdeen, Maryland. That's where we took the training for that particular thing.
Okay. Now, did you like it there better than in California?
It was a lot better weather, you know. Yeah, it wasn't as hot for one thing.
Now, how was it that you were assigned to be with this group? Did you have to take tests, or did they just pick men out of the group?
Oh, they just picked. You took a test, and whatever you rated on it, then you went. Some went to small arms repair.
Mm-hmm.
Some went to fixing guns, whatever, different things.
Okay. Now, during this time, whether you were out in California or when you were in Maryland, did you get much of a chance to go off base? Did you get any?
Just
Liberty
a furlough home.
Okay.
Yeah, they usually give you 15 days.
Now, was that before you shipped overseas or in between training
Pretty
sessions?
much before, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what was it like to go home after you'd been in the Army for a while?
Oh, that was great. They offered you 2 ranks higher if you'd re-enlist. I
Okay.
had
Well, that was after the war. I was just asking about the furlough part. So when you were on furlough, before you went overseas, what did it feel like to go home after you'd been training for a while?
Oh, great. Yeah, it was good.
Do you remember what you did while you were home?
No, the typical like anyone else that was in the service, I guess.
Okay.
Nothing special.
All right. Now, when do they ship you overseas?
It's October. It must have been middle of September. Some of this isn't real clear.
Okay. I guess, yeah, the unit history does say it was September of 1944.
44, yeah.
All right. Now, before they shipped you overseas, had you been following the progress of the war, reading
Pretty
newspapers?
much, yeah. We get the little newspaper, and also get the Stars and Stripes. That's a newspaper, and other than that,
Oh.
typical.
And when the time came for you to actually go overseas, were you looking forward to doing that, or?
Yeah, it's strange, but of course, like I say, if you're 25, you wouldn't want to go. But at that age, wow, that was a great experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, when they're moving you around the country, how did they move you? Were you in trains or?
Trains.
Okay. And had you ever taken a long train ride before you were in the Army?
No.
Okay. So can you describe that experience, what that was like?
It was good. It was a troop train. I would guess probably 2-3 miles long, because you could look out the window, see the 2 engines up in front going through the mountains. They used 2 steam engines.
Mm-hmm.
And you look behind you, and the caboose is down there about 3 miles. But it was interesting traveling and everything.
Right. About how long did it take to get across the country?
Well, from California to Detroit, usually that's as far as it went, and they had to take a bus from there.
Okay.
To Saginaw. But it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting.
All right. Now, where did you ship out from?
Boston and Massachusetts.
Okay. And did you take one long train ride from California to Boston, or did they let you go home first and then go to Boston?
No, you went from California right to Boston.
Wow.
They put you on the ship in the harbor there.
Now, what kind of ship did they put you on?
It was the former American luxury liner, the SS America, and they renamed it the West Point. And it's big, it was big. And of course they cover the decks and anything with wood to preserve it so it don't get all battered up.
Right. Now, did they still have cabins or staterooms, or did they just have big...
No, they had bunks you
openings?
slept on if you could sleep.
All right.
But yeah, that's about what they had for.
Okay. Now, did you have a preference for getting a top bunk or a lower bunk, or...
No, they say you, and over there, over here.
All right. Now, what was the weather like when you were crossing the ocean?
It was partly cloudy, but pleasant. It wasn't rough or anything.
Okay.
Fact is, when we were going, the Queen Mary was heading for New York. You could see it in the distance.
All right. Now, were there men getting seasick anyway?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know I did shortly after we left Boston. You're not used to that kind of traveling, you know. But, what was I going to tell you about that?
Oh. Did you get sick just once, or did you stay sick the whole time?
No, just first 3 days out. All I lived on was rye bread and tea.
Well, it was not unusual there. All right. Now, were you sailing in a convoy or by yourself?
No convoy. No. They may have had a submarine escort, but we didn't know it.
All right. Well, some of the ocean liners were very fast, and so they thought they were safer to go by themselves and just outrun the German submarines.
Some could, yeah.
Now, did you zigzag? Did you change course a lot?
No, every 7 minutes they changed course.
Okay.
It was interesting. At night you go to the back and you look and you see all the sea life that lights up the path of the ship, and like little fireflies.
Now, did they warn you not to light matches or cigarettes?
No smoking on decks. You had to smoke below. You could smoke on deck during the day, but not at night.
Right. They don't want any lights for the Germans to see.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, where did they land you when you got across the ocean?
Liverpool, England.
Okay.
Then they put us on these little English trains. They're small, they don't hold many. And we went across the lower part of England to Southampton, near Southampton. And that's a big British seaport.
Great. And then, did you stay there very long?
No, probably 3 weeks, something like that.
Okay. And what did you do during that time?
Typical training, added training.
Okay. Did they let you go into London or anything like that?
Yeah, I got into London twice. And of course, they had their bus bombs going over. And I never did see one, but at night you could see the flame from it. They were like a rocket. And
did you hear them land?
pardon?
Could you hear the explosions when they landed?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, did you think maybe you shouldn't be in London?
Anywhere else but there.
Okay.
But we went, try to see the more interesting things, but like at night, you see nothing. Everything's dark.
That's right.
No lights nowhere.
Okay. Now, how did the English people seem to treat American soldiers then?
Good. There was some resentment on the part of the servicemen because you're in their country, and they, not all of them, I know when we got into Germany and that, we always had British on one side or the other in front of us or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just regular people.
Right.
Regular soldiers like anywhere else.
Okay. Now, do you remember Christmas that year?
The what?
Did you remember celebrating Christmas that year, 1944? Did you do anything to celebrate Christmas in 1944?
Oh, no. They came and went.
Mm-hmm. And I guess,
Same with birthdays or anything else.
mm-hmm. Did they make an effort to at least celebrate Thanksgiving or give you different food?
Yeah, they would celebrate, especially like Eastern holiday. You would get turkey some, not much. But.
All right. Okay. Now, then you ship over to France then, at sort of the very end of the year?
We left England on LSTs and crossed the Channel, landed in Le Havre, France.
Right. Now, what was the LST ride like as opposed to riding an ocean liner? Do you remember being on that boat?
Oh, sure. In the daytime, you look down the side and you see the metal going boing, boing, like an oil can. They're only made out of metal, I think. But anyway, they lost one going there. It was apparently a torpedo. You can see it burning in the distance. But they claimed that the Germans couldn't torpedo LST because they didn't draw enough water.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they draw 6 foot of water and the torpedo would just go underneath. Well, they were wrong because they apparently invented a torpedo that would go right in the side of it.
Yeah. Well, LSTs were pretty good targets sometimes. Of course, the Germans also had a lot of mines too, so those were another danger.
Oh, yes.
And LSTs get those too. All right. Now, you land in Le Havre, and then from there, did they load you up in trucks and send you someplace or on trains?
Yeah, then we headed for Germany. You could see the artillery, the blue, like blue lightning. And you knew then which way you were going.
Okay. Now, what sector did they send you to? Where did you go when you left Le Havre?
Various French chateaus, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they put up the troops. Well, sometimes you had to sleep on the ground, but it wasn't bad in the summer.
But you were arriving in January.
Pardon?
But you show up in January in a pretty cold winter.
Yeah.
Now, where did they send you first? Did you go up to the Netherlands first, or?
No, we came. We were in at that point. Then we were in Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg.
Right.
What was I going to tell you? That one. Oh, that's what I wanted to say was. That's when the Germans attacked in the Bulge.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody calls it the Bulge because it put a bulge in the line. But it's the Ardennes salient, Ardennes forest in Belgium.
Okay. And by the time your unit gets over there, the Germans are already being pushed back again.
Not that much.
By middle of January, yeah. I mean, they were still there. There were still lots
by the end of January, they had it under control.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right. Kind of by the end of December, they pretty much stopped them, and then after that, they're going back. But there was still a lot of fighting, and there was fighting north of the Bulge and south of the Bulge,
Yeah,
too.
they shuffled everyone around, and if you were a cook or whatever you happened to be, they gave you a rifle and said you're in the infantry now.
Right. Yeah, at the worst points, they did that. Okay. Now, what kind of work did your unit have to do? Because you were an anti-aircraft unit. So what did they do with you?
Repaired various equipment, including gun sights, things like that.
Now, did you only work on anti-aircraft gun sites, or were you helping the artillery?
Anything had to do with artillery or gun sites, you know.
Okay. And was your unit just kind of moving around and helping different people?
Yeah, and also yeah, you moved around, and somebody had the problems with the equipment, guns or whatever, and sometimes two people go out, sometimes a dozen,
Mm-hmm.
and the Germans captured 6 Americans, but it was getting near the end of the war, so they let them go.
Okay. So sometimes men from your unit went far enough forward that
Yeah.
they were at risk. Now, did you ever come under fire yourself?
Well, mortar and artillery mostly.
Mm-hmm. And how close did they get?
Well, you couldn't see them, but they were there. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't see us, and we were here. But they pretty well, what would I say? Well, they were soldiers just like we were, and they were there to win the war for their side.
Right.
But near the end, when they were surrendering by the thousands, and they had no way to feed that many thousands of them. And there was one what they call a submarine station. It was all fenced in. The Germans had blown down one of the towers, so they communicate with subs. And there must have been, someone said it was over 100,000 soldiers a day, and it wasn't that big an area.
And was this being used
About the
as
size of a baseball field.
Okay. And were the Allies using that as a place to put prisoners?
Yeah, well, they were surrendering on their own.
Right. No.
And they loaded them in trucks. They walked, and wherever they had a big area, that's where they put them till they could feed them. And they had this one place had 100 and some thousand prisoners, and they had 2 soldiers guarding them.
Now,
But they didn't want to go anywhere but home.
Okay. Now, did you see very many of these prisoners yourself? Did you see a lot of these Germans at the end of the war?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And what did they look like to you? How old were they? What kind of shape were they in?
Just like any other person, except for the uniform.
But they didn't look any older or younger than your guys?
Some were surprising, were older, in their 30s.
Right.
And I'm surprised they lived that long, but
At the end of the war, the Germans were running out of people, so they were putting older men and younger boys in the army.
when the Russians went into Berlin, Hitler came through before the Russians started shooting at him, and he put a helmet on a 12-year-old kid, so it's okay, defend Berlin. And that's about the story with that.
Right. Now, did you ever see any German aircraft?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We always see them. Well, I think in one of those forms, those 419 German fighters engaged 2 Spitfires, but the Spitfires shot 2 of them down, and the other 2 took off. And then another time I saw a Thunderbolt. That's a fighter, but it's a big airplane. And they were fighting back and forth with a 109, German 109. Either they were low on fuel or out of ammunition. They called it quits. Each one went their way.
Yeah. Okay. Now, did the unit you were serving with, I mean, did they actually get to shoot at any German aircraft? Or
Oh yes. Yeah, they had 50 caliber machine guns, 4 on the trailer. and they're real effective at the close range.
Right. Well, but were there very many German aircraft that would come and attack, or just a few at a time?
Their Air Force is pretty much shot down. There wasn't many left.
All right.
We were in one airfield, and they just left. They got out of there fast. It was the German Focke-Wulf 190 fighter, very good, better than anything we had. And I sat in it. It was kind of dumb because they mined.
Oh.
And under the wings they're loading ammunition, and I got one of the shells, but lost it or somebody took it. Just as well.
Yeah. Not a really safe souvenir to play with.
Yeah, well, it's an unsafe thing to lug around.
Right. Right. Okay. Now, as you were moving through Europe, and especially as you went into Germany, did you see much of the civilian population then?
Yeah, it was sad. But this goes with war, I guess. People are, nothing to eat, or very little. And you'd say, well, they started it. That's true. Hitler was an idiot, and he listened to an idiot. But it still wasn't right, men, women, and children killed. Was it Dresden? British bomb at night, and we bombed daytime. 45,000 men, women, and children are killed. And you say, well, they started it. Well, why kill the little ones, They didn't start it. But, yeah, and now we're involved in something else. I hope that ends soon before it gets too far out of hand.
Well, part of the reason why we do these interviews is, we want to record what happened in as complete a story as we can, and not one that's necessarily been cleaned up for everybody, but reminds them this is part of what war involves. And they can decide how they want to react to that themselves, but that's what you saw, that's what you experienced. So now, over the course of these early months of 1945, were you moving around a lot? Did you change your positions a lot?
Especially during the Battle of the Bulge, because they were moving so fast. They're heading for Antwerp. That's a big port. And they'd have made it. They almost made it. But that's what they call it, the bulge, Battle of the Bulge, because they put the bulge in the line.
Right.
But they were, they had all troops, infantry, you name it. They moved them around a lot because the Germans being one spot, and so if you keep going, you're gonna run into them. So go this way. So we didn't know the difference. We just went where they said.
Right.
But
Okay. Now, there are a couple of other kind of incidents that the unit history mentions or talks about. One of them being sort of, did you ever take target practice using German buildings or things like that to?
no, not really, just for the fun of it, no. But as we went through these towns, there might be a stray wall standing. The city's gone.
Right.
It's rubble. In fact, they had to get tanks, and the engineers would come in with tanks. They had plows mounted on them, and they cleared the rubble away so they could put tanks and trucks through. But
Now, where did you go in Germany, or how far into Germany did you get?
Well, it's on the map, but I can't remember all the towns, villages, and what have you. A lot of the villages and small towns were never touched, but the bigger cities are pretty well flattened. What's I going to tell you about that?
Now, there are particular places that you went in Germany that you remember pretty well.
Yeah. Oh, you asked about the you know, how much we moved around.
Mhm.
Well, we moved mostly with trucks, some walking, but not that much.
Mhm.
But well,
Let's see. Well, at some point you got to a glass factory, didn't you?
pardon?
You went to a glass factory at one point.
Yeah, I was right on the border of Belgium and Germany, near Aachen.
Mm-hmm.
They lost it twice. The Americans took it, and the Germans kicked them out. So they went back in and took it, and they stayed there. But in this glass works, you see it on German cars. It's a secret glassworks.
Mm-hmm. Securitor.
Yeah, and well, infantry is pretty bad. When the American infantry, they if they went somewhere like that, they shoot holes through everything.
Mm-hmm.
And houses, if the house is still standing, they set fire to it or something, and they just destroyed everything in sight.
Now, did a glass factory give them a lot of things to shoot at? Was there a lot of broken glass around?
Oh yeah. And yet it was surprising with all the concussion from bombs. The Americans bombed them during the day. And these are huge, long buildings. And they just, they leveled them. But, you know, as soon as the Germans or the Americans left, next day they were out there sanding and cleaning the lays off and everything, greasing them down for, like they're ready for a future war.
Go right back again. Okay. Now, at a certain point, you wound up finding a picture book with lots of pictures of Hitler in it.
Those that we got there?
Right.
Yeah, that was in the school. I couldn't even tell you what town, no.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing there is beyond me, unless they're showing the great leader to the little kids.
Mm-hmm.
That may have been what the purpose was, but they're really good photographs.
Yeah. Very nice production there. All right. Now, did you come across any of the labor camps or prison camps or things like that? Could you tell us about what you saw?
I never got in the big ones, but in Hanover, I guess you'd call it a one burner. They have one oven, and they're cremating people. They're killing them, you know, with gas. But we didn't actually see them. They had moved out by then. The American forces moved them out and tried to feed them, but some died from eating regular food.
Right.
Because their body wasn't used to it. And but by then the Germans were gone.
Right.
And I remember this one building we went into. They had nothing to eat really. They had potatoes, dirt, raw. They boiled it in a big iron pot, and that's what they ate every day. And some never made it, of course. They starved.
Okay. So aside from that, I mean, what else was there left to see at the camp when you got there? The people were gone, but what was left behind?
Oh, well, the ovens were there and the bones didn't burn through. And how many people would have been? This was a small one. Because the bigger ones were in Poland and parts of Germany. The big concentration camps.
Right. Now, were you surprised when you saw it? Like, were you expecting to see something like that?
No.
Okay.
No. In fact, it's Eisenhower went through one of them. I forget which one. And he was so mad at what went on that he wouldn't meet with the Germans to sign a peace treaty. He said, I don't want nothing to do with them people. He's a good man, Eisenhower was.
Now, tell me a little bit about the men that you were serving alongside. You were with the same group of men pretty much the whole time you were in the service? Did you have the same men in your unit the whole time?
Oh, yeah, pretty much. Some transferred out, some transferred in.
And who did you report to, or who was your officer or commanding officer?
The captain. His rank was captain. And they had seven officers, second and first lieutenants, and warrant officers.
Okay. And did you have any sense of what their backgrounds were? Were they regular Army guys or just?
No, they were either inducted or they may have enlisted and went to officers' candidate school. And but trying to think of something I was going to mention. I can't think what it was.
Well, were these good men to work for? The officers treat the men well?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Our captain was, I think he worked for Budweiser beer. He was a salesman. Can you imagine that? But he was a good officer. He went to officers' candidate school also. But,
Now, was he much older than the rest of you guys?
Oh, well, he was about 34, 35.
Doesn't seem so old now. But
Pardon?
it doesn't seem so old now.
No, it don't.
But it did then. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you remember where you were when the war in Europe ended?
We met the Russians at the Elbe. We were 35 miles from Berlin. They had taken Berlin by then. And getting back to Eisenhower, he said, should we, American and British forces, take Berlin? And Eisenhower and the other high leaders said, let the Russians take it. He said, they're going to suffer casualties like you wouldn't believe. So they gave them the go ahead, take Berlin. 120,000 men they lost to take Berlin. And it was a shambles, just a shambles. But we would have suffered the same casualties had we wanted to take it. But anyways, we met them at the Elbe. They're scroungy, dirty looking like we were. The happy lot though. And they wanted, of course they had the cognac and
Vodka,
they're
probably.
getting drunk.
Yeah.
But they want to trade you your helmet, your gun for theirs. I said, we can't do that. Maybe they can. So there was, that's about, that's where we met, about 35 miles from Berlin.
Okay. Now, did you stay there or did they send you someplace else?
No, they sent us pretty much the same track we foul going there, and we ended up back in France to be put on, which we were, put on ships and we were sent to Texas for retraining. And because we were going to go to the Pacific. And I thought, good night, isn't once enough? But that's, I think it was a 86th Division. The poor guy's been in there 2 or 3 years, fighting all the time. They plunk him on both some in Japan, or to the Pacific to fight the Japanese.
All right. Okay, yeah, because they have you getting back to, so you move out pretty quickly. You were not part of the German occupation. You just left, and you're in Texas before the war ends with Japan.
Yeah, you had to be in any given position for 30 days to be eligible for these various ribbons. And had the Army of Occupation, you know, and the Victory Medal, and all the rest of them went with it.
Right.
I'm amazed today. I didn't know we had so many generals in our services. They got ribbons like this.
Right. Now, when you think back to that time that you spent in the Army, and especially over in Europe, are there particular memories that come back to you that kind of stand out for you?
No, nothing special. One thing, you know, went into the other. And we came back on an Italian luxury liner, the Monticello. That was a big liner. But trying to think something else I was going to mention. I can't think of what it was now. But it was, we came in New York to see the Statue of Liberty.
One of the things that there's a couple of things in the unit history that you may or may not have seen. I was going to ask you about. One of them is, I said, when you went into Germany, there was a point when the unit came into contact with a lot of people who were working as slave laborers for the Germans.
Oh yeah, there's many that they wouldn't dare say it before when Hitler was in power, but once they were free, they said he was crazy, and he was a fruitcake.
Well, those would be the Germans you're talking
Good
about.
Germans, yeah.
Okay, right. But there were also, the Germans also brought a lot of people from other countries and used them as laborers.
The barn where they burned all those people, they could have been Italians, Polish, Russians, French.
Right.
And they said, you come and work Germany, you make big pay. Well, it was forced labor, and they made them build everything from rockets to airplanes. And then they had no more use for them. You think they just let them go, but they didn't. Ended up killing them.
All right. Now, when did they actually let you go home?
That's the year I got out in February of '46. And
What were you doing in those last months when you were still in the Army after the war was over?
training. I don't know for what. Japanese surrendered.
Right.
And but they had so many thousands on hand of all the branches. They had to keep them busy.
Right.
Navy, they sent them out somewhere to an island. And the Army, train them some more. For what? There was nothing. It was done. You know, the war had ended.
Now, were they sending men home from your unit kind of one at a time? They get their
Pretty much, yeah. You had to have so many points. I think it was 50. I thought it was 52 points. I'm not sure of that. And if you had that many points, you could get out.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you one of the first guys out or one of the last guys out?
So, about halfway, I guess. Yeah. Some had, 60, 70 points, so they went right away. And those that didn't have too many points, they were stuck for another year or two.
Now, did they try to get you to re-enlist?
Oh, sure. Yeah, they offer you 2 ranks higher than what you had. Yeah, but no, not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I had enough.
So what did you do when you got back home?
Well, I tried. The jobs should have been plentiful, but they were a little scarce. They're a decent job. But I worked at various places. They ended up with working for the power company. And that's where I retired from. 39 years.
All right. Okay. Now, when you look back at your experience in the Army now, how do you think that affected you? Did you change at all while you were there? Or?
That's hard to answer. You like to think you didn't change when you got older,
Mm-hmm.
but it must have changed somehow, I guess. But I can't put my finger on
Mm-hmm.
what it was.
Do you think you were more grown up when you got out?
Oh yes, yeah.
And did you learn things maybe about the world or about other people that you wouldn't have learned?
Never to get in a war again.
Right.
Yeah, here we are in one.
Happens.
But, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything of significance we've left out here that you can think of? All right. So it looks like you've done a good job. So thank you for coming on in and talking to me today.
Oh, thank you. Who's I on?